Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Kat, the Nurse Flipper, and today we're going to review some studio pottery. Most of these are going to be known artists, but I really want to show you some designs and styles that even if you couldn't identify would sell very well. Now, there's tons of studio pottery out there. There are tons of signatures. A lot of them are unknown artists, but some of them will still sell very, very high. So I'm going to show you my top 20 selling studio pottery pieces, give you some tips and pointers on what to look out for when you are outsourcing, and also show you the signature. So maybe if you find one of these higher dollar known artists, you'll be able to identify it. Studio pottery is absolutely everywhere. I see it at every thrift store. I see it at almost every estate sale. So how do you know which ones are worth picking up? Well, the number one thing is going to be if you can identify the signature. They are very easy to look up. You might need Worth Point for a 10-year history, but eBay does now offer a research tab on the phone that looks up 3 years of history. So if you find pieces that aren't as rare, you will be able to locate them on there. We still find a lot that have not been on eBay for over 3 years, so we still subscribe to Worth Point. I do have a video on that. I'll pop it up top for those of you that aren't familiar with it. But if you can't identify that signature, what do you do? So one thing you can do is definitely post it in a Facebook group that specializes in pottery, and the collective of people in there will have a lot more knowledge than you as a single person will. Sometimes they won't be able to identify it though, and you'll just have to simply put that it's signed and price it where you're happy. I will tell you, I personally am okay if I undersell something, as long as I make the profit I want. So if I paid $5 and I can sell this studio pottery piece for $50, I'm happy, right? I make about a $40 profit. And if that person buying it has more knowledge than me and they can flip it for $500, good for them. Maybe one day you'll be that person that can grab them for that 50 and sell them for 500. The more you learn, typically, in my experience, the more you earn. You need to expand your knowledge. So watching videos like this, trying to identify those signatures, just scroll in some of those pottery identification groups and make yourself more familiar with signatures. There are a lot of ways to increase your knowledge. There are also books. I know Worth Point has a section on signatures. I personally do not utilize that. And I typically don't spend a lot of time researching unless I really feel that this piece is valuable. Then I will put more time. But you have to be careful with that because time is money. And you don't want to spend a ton of time trying to identify possibly unknown artists. So let's go ahead and take a look at 20 of the top selling studio pottery pieces. I'm going to show you those signatures. I'm also going to show you some that the artists were not identified and show you some characteristics to keep an eye out for that are worth really big money. First up, this is a really, really neat piece. This is Hal Fromhold, mid-century studio ceramic soldier on horn, shaped bird creature. This one sold for a best offer on $350. Unfortunately, they don't show the signature on this one. And it is mounted on a piece of wood, so maybe that signature is under it. But anything that looks different and eclectic like this, I would definitely pick it up. Next up is a name you definitely need to know, and that is a Windblad Denmark Studio Art Pottery. This is a Vessel head vase, vintage Danish Eva picture. This sold for $350. Anything that looks like this, I'll tell you, I would pick it up. Now, here you can see they are showing it on display on the table. This other one sold for just as high as well. And here you can see, this is cool. Face stuff and face jugs, face pitchers. They really, really do sell well. I'm hoping we can find a signature here. There it is. So you can see the K1090 Danmark, and I don't see that Windblad, right? Danmark Studio. You do see the Danmark though, so you would be able to look that up. It did have a chip, a couple of chips, and still sold for $350. Next up is an identified one. So this one is Catherine Ann Barker, Studio Pottery, New Mexico, 1993. This one I just thought looked really, really neat. This one sold for $395. You can see the sunset there as well as those palms on the corner. So when you see them that are very well done like this, I feel like whether this was identified or not, it would sell very, very well. This to me reminds me of a pyramid. I think I probably would have put that in there. So this one's not hard to read, right? You can read that Barker 93. The C almost looks like an O, but pretty easy to identify. Look up Barker and you would see some of her pieces, and great sale, best offer on $395. Up next is a Susan Espinoza 1960s studio pottery art wall plate signed. This one sold for $425. This one definitely would have caught my eye. You can see them sitting there together on a bench. The detail is really, really neat on this one. And this one was not signed on the back. This one's actually signed there on the plate itself. It's hard to read, but that does say S. Espinoza. And so they're not all going to be signed on the back. You want to look on the front as well for a signature. And great, great sale on this one, $425. This is actually another piece by the same artist, but I wanted to put it up because the face stuff sells, guys. It sells whether it's known artist or not. So this is a Susan Espinoza decorative redware hanging studio art pottery from 78. This Espinoza is very, very easy to read, and the date. This one sold for a best offer on $445. And here you can see that Espinoza 78 in the corner. So again, marked on the front and not on the back. Don't always assume signatures are on the back. Now here on this one, it does have the SE stamped on the back as well. So sometimes they will have double marking, sometimes just on the front. But this artist is definitely one you need to know. Again, this is Susan Espinoza. Up next is another one that I think would have sold high regardless of if it was signed or not. This is a Ron Myers lidded jar with all the usual suspects with woman studio pottery. This one sold for $440. So this one, look at the kitty cat with the whiskers. This is what I wanted to show you. Stuff like that. There's a coyote, I believe. And there is the woman. So if you see something that looks like this, pick it up. It looks like this one is not signed. I am not seeing a signature on this. So not sure how they identified it. But again, this is another one I feel would sell high with or without a signature. Up next is a really good example of one that if it was not a known artist, I don't think this would sell high. So I wanted to show you this as well. But this one was identified. This is a Ruth Rapon, Sacramento, California, studio pottery, flambe glaze from 1970. Now, I would pick something like this up if it was studio and I had a set. But if it was a single bowl and it was not identified, I don't think I would. And that's because you see stuff similar to this quite often. So you have to be really careful, especially if you're paying up. I love this glaze. So here is the signature on this one. And that is not one that I would have noticed. Now, I will tell you, I can see the two P's there side by side. hopefully a studio pottery group would have told you. Watch those peas side by side is what I will remember from this. There they are a little closer. Beautiful, beautiful bowl. But again, one I think if not identified probably would not sell very high. So just keep that in mind. But with that identification, this one sold for almost $500. Next is a beautiful piece. This is a Harry Hole Scargo pottery. It does say rare incised porcelain jar, mid-century modern studio pottery. This one sold for a best offer on $500. This is another one with this look. I think this would sell high regardless of if it was identified. Beautiful, beautiful pottery. Now I want to show you. See, I would not, they're showing that this similar one sold on eBay for $2,500. So I think this seller undersold it, because if I get one and I see that it sold for $2,500 on WorthPoint, I'm going to be at $2,500. So I think they definitely undersold this. Honestly, if I had seen this before it sold, I would have picked it up and listed it at $2,500, because you have that history that it sold for $2,500 regardless of what you paid for it. So pricing something at $500 that previously sold for $2,500, you are driving the price down, which as a seller is not what we want to do. We want to keep that price high. So again, on this one, if I had that info they showed, I would have priced this at $2,500, but they were happy with their $500 sale. Next up is one that I would not pick up unless I could identify it, because this is a little more plain. This is a Warren McKenzie Minnesota Studio Pottery multi-glazed vase. It does say vintage. This one sold for $499.95. Here we'll take a look. And again, this is something that if you couldn't identify it, I would not pick up. You can see here the M in the square. So that is what is showing it's Warren McKenzie. It is not signed. It is just this M here. So remember that M, because his pieces obviously sell for good money. But this is, again, I would not pick this up if I couldn't identify it. But with that M, this was a great sale at almost $500. Up next are probably one of my favorites. And I don't think this is a known artist. So this is 3 vintage mid-century modern studio art pottery, low bowls. They're signed Nelson from 1950 and 1954. These just look so friggin' amazing. I absolutely love these. They are very abstract. These sold for a best offer on $574.95. Here you can see them up close. So Nelson probably made these in his garage, right? It says Nelson July 40. So really cool. They are pointing out a chip there. This is my favorite one. I love this one. So this is stuff you would definitely pick up, but Nelson is not a known Nelson, I don't think. Can see there is some crazing there. These are just really, really, really cool pottery plates. And this is something I would pick up regardless of if I could identify the artist or not. Another amazing example of one that I would pick up as well. This is a Sandra Johnstone pottery art teapot, University of California, Berkeley. This one sold for $600. So you want to remember this artist's name, Sandra Johnstone. This is such a neat teapot with the different textures in the clay there. Beautiful lid. And here we can see it is signed Johnston. And that, I don't see an E on the end of it. So maybe that's just her signature. I would have searched for Johnston. You can see the 1994. But I think this piece would sell high regardless of if it was a known artist or not. Amazing, amazing sale on this one at $600. All right, my friend, I'm going to interrupt because tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, we are going to do Shop the Shed, and this is some of the amazing stuff that we have got available. Make sure you come over to Whatnot and bookmark it,
Look at the Guy Hardy. Life is good Tervis. You guys know I love Tervises, mushrooms, Sonala. We've got some gorgeous purses as well. Look at that hand knit one. So let me show you some more stuff. Again, if you see anything in this, just come in the morning or at noon and let us know what you want. Let's look at some more that's going to be available. So if you want designer boxes, my friends, or you do crafts and need some Hermes ribbon, now you know where to get them. We have got Hermes, we have got Chanel, we have got Louis Vuitton. All of the boxes that you could possibly want. Anything that you see is available. Simply come in tomorrow to Whatnot. Tell me you saw it on this preview video and we will get right to it. Look at that vase. Fun Native American spirit stick. Beautiful mugs. Some iridescent art glass coasters. Let's go. These are the last of the shelves in here, but we have so much more. So all of this is available again tomorrow on Whatnot at noon or 9 a.m. Pacific. Look at the paperweights. We've got some good stuff, guys. Come and join us tomorrow on Whatnot. Use my code. I'll throw it down in the links. If you are not signed up, you can get $15 for free. We do have some teacups, head vase. Come and see me. We've got a lot more than this. I would love to see you over on Whatnot tomorrow.
Next up is a Lee McCarty Studio Pottery Plate of Marigold, Mississippi sign. This is one that I don't think would go if it wasn't identified. It's a really cool piece, though. This one was an auction. It was started at $650, got 2 bids, sold for $670. Here you can see it. This one, you can pretty much read that McCarty. I can see McCarty now that I know the name. But again, this is one, if you had it, you could definitely post in a pottery group and hopefully somebody would help you identify it. But remember that signature, you can see it on the bottom of the plate here as well. And this one sold for $670. Next up is a vintage glaze Pubic iridescent rope bowl, 4 inches tall. This one says it's signed, but the artist is not identified. I would not have known that this would sell for so much. So I definitely want to show you this one. This one sold for $689. You can definitely see the layers of rope of the clay. So maybe that's something to keep an eye out for. Here, it looks like it maybe says Elena or Eleanor, maybe Eleanor. But this is an unknown artist, and this piece sold for $689. So watch for rope bowls. I think that's the takeaway from this one. Next up is another one I would not have guessed would sell for this. This one sold for $775. It's a 4.5-inch bird. This one is identified as Nancy Paul, Texas Studio Art, San Antonio. We will take a look and see where that bidding was started. So look at this bird. This is not something I would have pegged, which goes to show you need to look up Studio Pottery. It's pretty easy to read that P-A-W-E-L, my friends. So if you see something like that, try and look it up. Let's go ahead and take a look at these bids. So this one was a case of 2 people really wanted something. There were only 2 bidders. So this seller was probably very happy with this. 2 bidders wanting something is all it takes to drive prices up, guys. That is all it takes, is 2 people to really want the same piece. So let's take a look. It looks like this piece was started at $40. $40 into $775. So absolutely incredible. Remember the name Nancy Paul, because that definitely, obviously, if you get a cool piece, could mean something. And remember, they start at $40. $40 would be a good price for that. If you get 2 bidders, though, you could end up like this and have $775. Be kind of common. This is a Karen Carn Studio Pottery. It does say U.S. Pottery, large lidded jar, wood fired. This was an auction, got one bid, sold for $799. So remember the name Karen Carnes, and we'll take a look here and see if we can find that signature. I don't see a signature on the bottom. Oh, there it is, guys. A K and a K backwards. So remember that. Double K with one backwards facing. Karen Carnes, remember the name. This one sold for $799. With this one, we are up to our top 5. This is a Jennifer McCurdy Porcelain Art Studio Pottery Vase Ivory. This one sold for a best offer on $950. I think this look would sell whether identified or not. This is a really, really neat vase with the openings there on the side. And here you can see very, very clearly, you can read that McCurdy on the bottom. So remember this name, Jennifer McCurdy. This is a small 8.5-inch to 9-inch vase and sold for best offer on $950. Number 4 is a really, really neat one, and I think this is an unidentified artist. So this is a 1930s boxer. They did put boxing, pottery, art deco, modernist sculpture. It does say signed, but this is something I think would sell regardless, and I don't think this one was identified. This one sold for $895. Here you can see it up close. You can see those boxing gloves. Really, really neat piece. And let's see if we can see this signature. And look, this was a 2-piece one. That's pretty cool. Now, this is signed Holmes. They didn't put the name, so I'm going to assume that artist is probably not well known, but amazing sale at $895. Number 3 on the top selling is one that I think would sell very, very good regardless. This is a Josh DeWeese large stoneware jar, Archie Bray Foundation, Montana Pottery. This is a super, super cool piece. Was an auction, got one bid for $1,800. This sold in Helena, Montana. I think that's where Troy is, Mountain Man Treasures. Too bad Troy didn't find this amazing vase, right? Really, really neat. Look at all the detail on this. Very abstract and beautiful, beautiful studio pottery piece. Very 3D on some of the artwork there. I'm trying to see. Hopefully we've got a signature. I wonder if that is his signature. Do you see that little thing in there? That might be it. Oh, there it is. That's what we need to watch for. There's a JD stamped into the bottom, my friends. So watch for initial stamped in the bottom. That's the second one identified like this. But look at how big this thing is. This thing is giant. It's over 2 feet. I don't think Troy would have wanted to ship that. Shipping was $400, guys. $400 in shipping on this vase. Amazing, amazing sale at $1,800. Number 2 is a Hiso Lee large sculptural porcelain bowl, Archie Bray Foundation. This is the same seller as that last one. So another one Troy missed out on. This looks like trees. Check this out. It's trees. This is one I think would have done well regardless. This one got 2 bids, was started at $2,000, but sold for $2,250. Here you can look at the trees. This is a piece I would pick up regardless of if I could identify it. The glazing on this is beautiful. There is some crazing. They are showing that. This is just an incredible, incredible piece. I think I would probably have a hard time getting rid of this one. And I do not say that about very many, but this is one I would. Here you can see it's about 15 inches. And this one was not signed. This probably came from a pottery collector with that last one, so they were able to identify the artist. But I do think a piece like this would sell high regardless of if it was identified or not. Number one selling is one that, without being identified, I don't think would have sold for very much. This is a John Ward Studio Pottery high-sided bowl. This was a UK seller. It sold for US $3,729. How incredible. Let's take a look at this thing. I don't see anything overly spectacular. So again, I don't think, if not identified, it would have went for much. Another with initials stamped, JW. So watch for those initials stamped. Here you can see it's not much bigger than a can of Coke. Remember JW, remember John Ward. This bowl sold for $3,700. All right. I hope you learned some new names, some new styles, some new patterns to look out for. I personally absolutely love studio pottery, but you have to be very careful because a lot of pieces will take forever to sell and not sell for much. So I hope you learn a few things to keep an eye out for with studio pottery. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I really appreciate you watching. Hit the thumbs up, share with your friends if you think they would enjoy this pottery video, and I will see you on the next one.